Well, thank you all for joining us for today's Backpacks to Briefcases Lunch and Learn Time Management and Life Hacks. As is the case with any virtual event, please excuse any glitches. If you experience video or audio issues, click the reconnect button at the top of your screen. Doing that will get you back to the webinar right away. Today's session is part of our ongoing Backpacks to Briefcases Ever Green certificate program. Through this series, we'll have 4 events each year, 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring. These events will focus on financial planning, workplace skills, personal branding, and personal life. Between each event, we have opportunities for golden electives, events like today's Lunch and Learn, or networking and volunteer opportunities. To get an Evergreen certificate and lapel pin, participants must complete all 4 Evergreen events and 2 golden electives. You don't have to do all of them in the same calendar year. We invite you to jump in when you can and join us whenever. You can get more information about the program at alumni.uab.edu/backpacks. Today we welcome Dr. Kathleen Nelson. Dr. Nelson attended St. John's University and New York Medical College. She moved to Alabama in 1976 as part of the UAB School of Medicine. During her time in Birmingham, she had several roles, including Senior Associate Dean for Students and Senior Associate Dean for Faculty in the School of Medicine. She retired from the school as a Professor Emerita in 2012 and joined the Keck School of Medicine at the University of Southern California. This past June, she retired her position as Clinical Professor of Pediatrics and Associate Dean for Leadership from the Keck School of Medicine. At this time, I would like to turn things over to today's guest, Dr. Nelson, for our presentation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Greg. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted that my slides came up. That was fast. Thank you. Hello, Blazers. I have such fond memories of the 36 years I spent at UAB, prior to it being the UAB Heerisink School of Medicine. But I actually was a teacher for some of the Heerisink children when they were medical students. So I was very excited to hear about that wonderful philanthropic contribution of the family to UAB and to the school. Well, today we're going to talk about time management and life hacks, but the main reason we're going to talk about it is to promote your well-being as an individual, both in school and in the workplace. I'd like to start by just saying, well, what is well-being? Well, well-being is really a subjective feeling of happiness. All right. You have frequent positive affect. You smile a lot. You're not feeling down in the dumps. You have a satisfaction with your life, and you have very infrequent times when you feel negatively. We like to promote well-being, and I know that well, I was going to say my role at Keck School of Medicine was not only a Senior Associate Dean for Leadership, but there was 2 other words attached to it, and it was for leadership and wellness. And I was responsible for training leaders and really promoting well-being, not only for the faculty, but also for the staff and students. So I've spent the last probably 4 or 5 years of my career focusing on well-being, and many of the things I'm going to talk to you about today are things that will help promote well-being. So the objectives of today's presentation are to first discuss some strategies for managing time. Then I'm going to talk about some evidence-based techniques, including something called the Pomodoro method, as well as talk about gratitude that will not only improve your efficiency, but also your satisfaction. You're going to learn how to use the Pomodoro method. We're going to learn about a brief gratitude practice that can increase life satisfaction. And hopefully we'll have time to share some suggestions for improving satisfaction with managing personal and professional lives by your own contributions. So when you're talking about managing your time, you have to examine your whole life, not only your professional time management skills, but your personal time management skills. I don't know how many of you know Stephen Covey, but he is probably most famous for a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he said doing things faster is no substitute for doing the right things. And one of his 7 habits of highly effective people is put first things first. So you have to understand what's most important and put that first. One way to do this is to really analyze how you spend your time. And you can do that by keeping a time log where you put down at 30-minute intervals everything you do. I say here for a few weeks. It's probably reasonable to do it for 1 week, including weekends of work that include your work or school time and your leisure time. Then you'll have to take the time to review it and to look and see what are the most important things that you do every week. If you find a very difficult task to do, it's important that you start it right away, okay? So even if you can't do the whole task, get started on it. And then look at the tasks that you're doing, and if they're not time efficient and you can delegate, please try to do that. So as you're looking at the log, try to identify the 5 most important things in your life. And these important things may be your partner or your children, maybe things involving your house, maybe the work that you do for your church, but prioritize them and look to see what they have to do with. Are they work? Are they family? Or are they self? And then as you see that, and as you're putting the number on it, so I would say, if you find that you have 5 important tasks and they all involve your family, obviously you have to have a goal for your family. Right? Classify your goals as urgent or difficult, as mid-level, or as non-urgent. Do it when your time allows. And look at your tasks within each goal similarly. In addition, build in some quiet time where you can have some time for just reflecting yourself, and set realistic deadlines for your goals. As you prioritize, there's going to be the temptation to work on low priority tasks because they're easier, they're maybe more pleasant, or you can do them faster. The more difficult tasks, and this is a big issue for both students, for those of us who are teachers, and for those in the workforce, is that sometimes if you have a tough task, it's easy to put it off till you think you're going to have more time to a period where you have more time to do it. That procrastination often backfires. Don't try to resist that. And if you have something that is an important task, but it may not be urgent, just get started on it. Okay? And again, determine what is important and what is urgent. And obviously the urgent and important probably should be first, and the urgent and the important but not so urgent should also get your attention. And we're going to talk about that in a little more detail in the next few minutes. Every task should have an outcome that you determine before you do the task. And also, don't underestimate the time you're going to need to do a particular task, because you also have to build in some time for crises, for problems. Say you're working on something, but you expect someone else to be doing a part of of the work, and they have a family crisis and can't get to it. So always build in a little extra reserve time. And again, when you break your goals down to manageable tasks, and many people like to develop checklists for that, so you can check it off and feel a little satisfaction that you're working toward the goal. And an important thing to recognize is that if you have that goal in mind and you know what you're working toward, it's easier to say no to some other things that might come up that would interfere with your ability to reach that goal. And again, a good strategy is to make that to-do list, check it off as you go down the list, and maybe update it several times a day. Ideally, if you could keep your desk clear of everything except for your current problem or current project, it's easier to work in a sort of a neat environment. The other strategy is, at the end of the day, straighten your desk, throw out the stuff or file the stuff that you're not going to be using anymore. Get it off your desk so when you come in the next day, it looks great. Keep your drawers organized. Keep pens, pencils, tape, scissors, markers, anything you might need for your project accessible and in a place where you know how to get it and you don't have to go looking for stuff to slow you down. Probably the most important thing I want you to get out of this part of the talk, though, is developing this time management matrix. So as you're looking maybe at your log, you can actually put tasks in the quadrants that they may belong in. And so on the left, the top is important and the bottom is not important. And across the top of your matrix, on the left, it's urgent, and on the right, it's not urgent. So your top left quadrant, quadrant 1, are the urgent, important tasks. And these are things that are maybe your deadline-driven project, a crisis that might have happened, a really pressing problem. These are the things clearly you have to do first. Put first things first, as Covey said, and the urgent, important are the things that go first. The not so urgent, but also very important, are in quadrant 2. That's the top right. Those are the things that involve your friends and relatives often, your relationship building, maybe long-term planning, opportunities for self-care and personal growth. Okay. Then you get to the bottom of the time management matrix, the urgent, but not very important. And that's probably where unfortunately, where we often spend a lot of our time. And these are things that might be interruptions in your day. They are emails, calls, meetings, or things that are pressing, but or you feel that they're pressing. And I would say that having one of these guys, a cell phone that may buzz whenever you get a text message, or notify you when you have an email, makes you available 24/7, but you don't have to be. Okay. And this is probably probably the biggest time sink that many folks have these days, is being a slave to the phone, or the phone, not necessarily phone calls, but texts and messages. Finally, quadrant 4 is where also we often spend a lot of time. I don't know how many of you play Words with Friends or other mobile games on your phone. I think if you were to look at how much time you spend, you probably spend a lot of your working day doing things that are pleasurable, but not necessarily important nor urgent. Okay. And so some of these are real time wasters. And again, if you seem to have a lot of leisure time in your day to do it, fine. But if you feel stressed by issues involving work or home that you're not having time to do, look to see where you might find time, and look at what you're doing in quadrant 4. So procrastination. We used to call this, for those of us who were in academics, academic constipation. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of stuff that we've done research or projects on with the intent to write a paper about it and get published. But often it just sits there because we can't get it out. And find lots and lots of excuses because it's not being done. So you have to recognize that you're doing it. This means perhaps give yourself a deadline to do it. Work out why you're doing it. If you're doing it because the task seems particularly difficult or overwhelming, one of the things you can do is just start on it. So for a paper, start on the introduction, start on the methods, look to see what you might be able to accomplish in a finite period of time. Sometimes just getting those first words on the page is very cathartic and helpful. So if it's not that the task is too difficult or overwhelming, but it's not a pleasant task, or it's not something you look forward to, think about what you want to do when you finish that task. Is there a reward you want to give yourself? And maybe focus on the reward that comes at the completion of the task. Or also, the other thing you can do is enlist helpers. If it's something that you find so odious, perhaps you've got it may be more fun to do with a friend or a family member. And so you can look to the idea that you're not doing it by yourself. Say cleaning the garage. You put it off, and it's just getting worse and worse. Well, think about maybe you can have a barbecue when you finish the garage clean out, and enlist other people to help you with the task. Other things that are in that quadrant 4 are, or maybe quadrant 3, which are the urgent but not very important, is when people stop by your office or come or interrupt you in the hall. But in your office, perhaps you don't always have to have an open door policy. Maybe you could set some specific office hours when you'll be available. One of my colleagues took out the chair that was in front of his desk. And so when you came in, you couldn't sit down and make yourself comfortable. You had to talk from a standing position. You also can close the door. When somebody comes in, you can stand up so that the person won't if there is a chair, won't sit down. He will stand up and talk to you. And also you can say you're busy and you'll see them later. It's okay to put a sign on your door saying the times that you'll be available for visits or to make appointments. What about phone interruptions? Well, voicemail, obviously. Set a time, and I understand you had a speaker last week that talked about email and messages, and just limit your time to return the calls to maybe two specific times during the day. Also plan your calls so that you have a list of things that you're going to discuss on the call, and don't overextend the time making small talk. And it's a good idea when you're returning calls or when you're expecting to set up meetings to have a calendar handy when you call back. We talked about having an organized desk. Don't try to look at your paperwork more than once. If you look at a piece of paper or you look at your mail, handle it, file it, or delegate it. And then throw this stuff that you're not using away. I guess the other idea is to put a clock that's easily visible, not only to yourself, but to visitors. And finally, take care of yourself. Self-care is probably the most important part of well-being. Don't miss meals. Schedule regular breaks. Plan your week in advance if you can, and identify when you are at your peak. I tend to be a morning person, so I am much more effective when I work from 8 till 10 in the morning than from 4 to 6 in the afternoon. So if you've got a time when you are more alert, more attentive to your tasks, do the most important tasks then. So takeaways from this part of the talk is prioritize, rank the most important things in your life and pick the top 5. Drop unnecessary activities. Protect your private time. Ask for help, or if somebody offers help, don't turn it down. And put in there time for fun and relaxation for yourself. Self-care. We're going to talk about life hacks, and a hack is any trick, shortcut, skill, or novelty method that may increase your productivity and efficiency and improve your satisfaction. One of those is something called the Pomodoro Technique. This is a structure for study or for work that's both highly effective and tends to burn you out less. Pomodoro means tomato in Italian, and it was named after this timer that looked like a tomato that the person who described this technique used. And it's part of a mindful approach to study and work. And it's structured, and it consists of periods of study or work that lasts for 25 minutes, and then organized break periods, which are 5 to 7 minutes long, over a 2-hour period. And then at the end of 2 hours, a more intense break cycle of 15 to 30 minutes. And the focus is on intentionally identifying and actively meeting your psychological, emotional, and cognitive needs during your break periods. So if you study or you work continuously for 25 minutes, and then you have 5-minute break, you can go to the bathroom, you can get a drink, you can say hi to your neighbors, but then at the end of 5 minutes, you come back and go for another 25 minutes break of work time. And this is what it looks like. In a 30-minute period, 25 minutes is work or study and 5 minutes of break. You do it again, another 25 minutes with 5 minutes study. And you do this for basically for 2 hours. And at the end of 2 hours, you take a longer break. Maybe you eat lunch. Maybe you go for a walk. Okay? This happens to be an evidence-based technique that if you have scheduled breaks and focusing on these needs, you're either your physiologic needs, you're thirsty, you feel the need to go to the bathroom, or your nutritional needs, you're hungry, you get a snack. This will prevent or delays burnout, and it increases your efficiency and your ability to accomplish your tasks. And research has shown that it has been extremely useful by a majority of participants when it's compared to other techniques. And it helps reduce procrastination. The other thing about Pomodoro is, especially if you do this as a group, and we do this with our medical students at the medical school at Keck, is that at least pre-pandemic, they would work using Pomodoro in the library in a group. So you would have groups they would have what's called learning communities. So 15 or 20 people in a learning community would all do their studying with Pomodoro at the same time. And so even though what they were doing was studying individually, it allowed the opportunity of support amongst each other. The next kind of hack I'm going to talk about involves gratitude. And gratitude is feeling grateful, right? It's an effective trait. It's emotion, and it can be a mood. It is the mindful, and again, here we go back to mindfulness and intentionality. You're mindfully aware of the benefits that have occurred to you. You are grateful. Again, like Pomodoro, there is evidence from controlled clinical trials about gratitude. And gratitude has been shown to facilitate coping with stress, to reduce materialism, to improve access to positive memories, to build social resources, to motivate pro-social behavior, to promote physical health, and it helps you attain your goals. And I'm going to show you one of the earliest studies about gratitude. Is called 45 Good Things. And what the investigators did in this study was they asked people to think, to spend a few minutes of every day reflecting on what went well that day, and to write those 3 things down for 2 weeks' time, okay? And at the end of 2 weeks, Well, before 2 weeks, they measured a variety of measures, including satisfaction and burnout and depression. They looked at it again at 2 weeks. The participants in the study only did it for 2 weeks. They didn't do it for a month. They didn't do it for a year. They just did it for 2 weeks. And I want to show you what happened. All right. So at baseline, they looked at happiness, burnout, problems with work-life balance, and depression. They asked them after a month, okay, they only did it for the first 2 weeks. They did not continue writing 3 good things down. At a month, depression was down, work-life balance, problems had decreased, and burnout had decreased, and happiness had increased. At 6 months, it persisted. And at 12 months, it had persisted. Right? It only takes about, I would say, less than 5 minutes a day to think about 3 good things that happened to you that day, and and write them down. And there's an app, I think, called the 3 Good Things app, that if you wanted to sort of structure your life so you could record those 3 things in a special place, you could do it on your phone. But this hack takes less than 5 minutes, and you can see what a positive outcome it has, even if you only do it for 2 weeks. All right, the other thing about reflecting on your day's activities is one of the things you can do is reframe something that went wrong into something that might be positive. And instead of perseverating on how bad your day went, think about it in a different way. What did I learn? What happened that might have surprised me? And is there anything I can be thankful for now? I know that we had an exercise in our medical, in just about every medical schools. We do morbidity and mortality conference, where we dissect kind of what happened in a case that led to a poor outcome. And we generally looked at it very negatively. But we learned from that the lessons that we learned, we wouldn't repeat a similar way of handling a similar case in the future, because we learned some positive lessons. But overall, what we then did was, other than the morbidity and mortality conference, we changed to something called vitality rounds, where it made us look at something that had an unexpectedly good outcome, and how could we do that in the future. So some takeaways here is practicing gratitude can actually retrain your brain. And that's actually what happens in the 3 good things exercise, and it can promote resilience. So you can spend 5 minutes each day reflecting on the things you've been grateful for during the last 24 hours. I know at dinner every evening, my husband and I start dinner by saying, what went well today? How was your day? What went well? What were the best things that happened? You can keep a gratitude journal, and you can look back at it. And finally, you can appreciate those who brought joy to your work and to your home life. Robert Emmons is a professor at the University of California at Davis. And he did most of he's done many of the studies on gratitude that look at controlled trials of gratitude activities. And when I showed you the evidence, he is responsible for producing much of that evidence. But he says basically that gratitude is the ultimate performance-enhancing drug at work. Another hack is outsourcing. And outsourcing is a practice where where you would hire somebody else to provide services that you would, if you hadn't hired anybody else, you would have to do. Okay, I'm sure you are very well aware of this, and many of us normally outsource much of our daily activities, including sometimes housework, sometimes yard work. Often we call, we use Uber Eats or get food delivery so that we don't have to prepare food. We hire nannies or put children in daycare. We have groceries delivered. We work with travel agents sometimes for travel arrangements. We get dog walkers. There are many tasks that can be outsourced. And ideally, if you've got the resources, that's another way that you can buy a lot of time back. I can tell you when I was a young mother and full-time worker in Alabama, one of the best things that I did was we lived out in Shelby County, and it took about, at the time, about a half an hour between UAB work and home. Nowadays, with all the traffic lights on 280, I would say it would probably take about 40 minutes. And I had two little kids. And I'd walk into my house, and the house would be kind of a mess, and I'd have to start dinner. And I was very fortunate to have a high school not too far from my house, and I called the high school to find out if there to the guidance office to find out if there was any high school student with a car that was looking to make some money, and I was able to hire a responsible person to come to my house from about 4 to 6 every day, did one major task a day, and was able to cut up the vegetables and prepare the food. So I just had to turn it on when I came home. So she would come 5 days a week. I would never see her because she would be, and she would do general straightening every day. So she would pick up the newspapers and she would straighten the beds. But the one major task a day would be vacuuming, for example, the whole house 1 day a week, cleaning the bathrooms 1 day a week, changing the sheets 1 day, 1 day a week. But otherwise just straightening and getting the house ready for dinner to be started. And it cost me at the time a minimum wage for 2 to 3 hours a day for 5 days a week. But I would walk in the door and my house would look neat. I wouldn't have to do anything major during the week for house care, and I could spend that time with my children and just turn on the stove for for the dinner because I didn't have to cut the vegetables or peel the vegetables. So it was definitely money well spent. So what are some of the other hacks? Say no to stuff that doesn't spark joy. Get a Roomba, one of those things that vacuum your house while you're away. Batch cook, use an Instapot or a crock pot, or cook on Sunday food for most of the week. Share responsibilities with your household members, and don't forget the children. Don't answer your emails when you're at home, and ask for help. I'm sure that you guys have several hacks that you've come up with, and I'm happy at the conclusion of this talk to hear what your shortcuts are. So some conclusions is using something like the Pomodoro method can lead to more efficient use of time and more effective mindset and productivity. Practicing gratitude regularly can change your brain and lead to better resilience and well-being. And outsourcing of stuff that takes time away from your life priorities might be worth the expense for the return on the investment. So time flies, and you must be the navigator. You can't kill time without injuring eternity. So go Blazers. Many thanks, and I'm here to answer any of your questions.
Well, Dr. Nelson, thank you so much for taking the last 40 minutes to go through some life hacks, some time management things. If you have a question, go ahead and toss it in the chat box. We will get to those today. We want to be sure you get your questions answered if you have them. I do have a few questions that have come in. So with time management matrix, going all the way back to that, who sets the level of importance? Because obviously you have two different levels of importance, and then, what needs to be done. So who sets that? Do you set that yourself?
Yeah, you have to set it yourself. Now, obviously, if you're working for a boss, or if you're in school and you have a project due tomorrow, that is urgent and important, right? So that is something that is deadline driven, and that is important to your work, or that you need in order to satisfy a course requirement. Takes on, if you got the assignment a month ago, at the time it was important, but probably not urgent. But as the deadline approaches, it moves from quadrant 2 to quadrant 1. It becomes more urgent and important.
Gotcha. So would you suggest completing one project in its entirety before moving on to the next, or do you dabble a little here, dabble a little there, and just kind of?
I don't. Well, I mean, it kind of depends on how urgent it is, right?
Yep.
So if it's due tomorrow, and it's going to take you a certain amount of hours to do it, and again, don't underestimate the time. I would say you probably want to get most of it done before you look at something else on your list. But don't pick up your phone to play your words with friends if you've got something urgent and important that's due tomorrow.
Gotcha. So is there a sweet spot in the number of study work cycles throughout the day? We mentioned the 2-hour cycle as a part of the Pomodoro technique. So what is the sweet spot? Because can you go all day and do that?
You actually can. And one of and especially if you're studying like for exams, for finals, mm-hmm. You can do 8 or 10 hours of cycle. But the idea is to make sure religiously take those breaks. And part of it is the intentionality of just doing 25 minutes, break for 5 minutes, 25 more minutes, break for 5 minutes. I would say most people do it for two complete cycles, do about 4 hours,
Okay.
and then probably the minimum is 2 hours, and the maximum is probably about 5 cycles of it, 10 hours.
Okay. So do you have any thoughts on multitasking? And I think I know you probably do, and I know which way it's leaning.
Well, no, I think all of us do multitask. So I would say that that's kind of the way of life in the United States, that is our life. But I think that the idea of putting first things first, and let me just recommend Covey's book to everybody, that 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, because it is a very, very worthwhile book for everybody, So it starts with being proactive, and it ends with sharpening the saw, which means take care of yourself. But the time management piece is certainly a whole chapter in there. But overall, to be an effective individual, it's important to pay attention to more than one thing at a time. But if you to be as mindful as possible about what the most important things are, and get them done.
And we did drop the link to Stephen Covey in the chat box, so go ahead and search that. So do you have any tips on keeping a planner or calendar, paper versus electronic, or other project management softwares or apps?
Yeah, well, Franklin Covey, who's Stephen Covey's father, is famous for inventing the planner. So, I tend to keep a lot on my calendar. So when I start my day, I look at my calendar to see what appointments I have, and when I'm going to have time to do my work. Let me just say that I am now a retiree. I was much more efficient when I was a full-time worker and mother, and there were some definite, urgent, important things meant I had to get to daycare by 5:30 to pick up my kids, because otherwise the daycare would close and nobody would be, the kids would be in tough luck, So having some of those firm things on my calendar, that I knew that people were counting on me, and I had to do it at a certain time and by was very important, and I have to say that now that my time is kind of my own, I am terribly inefficient. That unless I actually had this talk put on my calendar, I don't know that I would have remembered in my head that I had to be on it at 11:45. But that is, I don't think I could have lived without having a calendar to organize me.
So in the world that we're living in today, since COVID has been here now for 18 months, has time management become that much more of a priority for individuals just because it has set in, more people are working at home, or is it something that should have been in place pre-COVID?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think COVID has really made some things a lot harder. We're working from home there are more distractions, so that it's easier to get distracted by your children, by your by your plumbing, or things that happen in your house that when you were at work and could focus on work, you didn't have to think about everything that was going on in the home environment at that time. I think also the cell phone and being available 24/7 is a big issue that seems more acute with COVID too, because people are not necessarily working 9 to 5 or 7 to 4 or something like that, and because they have these technological advances, they can be reached at all hours, and sometimes they respond at all hours. And one of the things that I think ought to be done by the workplace is to really establish some policies about email, so that you don't feel guilty about not answering email on your home time. And I know that I frequently would send out emails that I write at night, and not and I put a disclaimer on my email saying, if you receive this and it is not during work hours, I do not expect an answer until work hours.
Well, Dr. Nelson, thank you so much for spending an hour out of your schedule. Retirement or not, you're still busy. So thank you so much for being with us today.
All right. Go Blazers.
Go Blazers. So for everybody who attended today, we will have a recording of the webinar available on their website tomorrow. Be sure to join us for other virtual events. On October 26th, we will welcome Dr. Suzanne Judd for Head Trauma and Brain Health, Protecting the Mind for Years to Come. Then on November 2nd, Dr. Jeffrey Wycliffe will join us for From Ashes to Floods, Our Changing Environment, and what the UAB School of Public Health is dealing with. Both of those webinars will start at noon. On December 9th, Robert Smith from the Amelia Center will be with us for Grief and the Holidays, Tips and Strategies on How to Cope. Finally, on December 16th, we will welcome Ryan Abrams from Paper Doll Bar as we learn how to create cocktails during Holiday Mixology 101. Those two webinars start at 7 p.m. Get more information or register for those at alumni.uab.edu/events. If you're looking for a podcast to listen to during your day or to and from work, check out UAB Green and Told. Our podcast features members of the UAB community and is released every other week. You can find it on Spotify and the Apple Podcast app. Visit alumni.uab.edu/green and told for a direct link. And you can also stay on top of everything alumni on social media. Just search UAB Alumni on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On LinkedIn, search UAB Alumni Career Community. Need to get a hold of us? Simply email alumni@uab.edu. Once again, thank you all for joining us for today's discussion with Dr. Kathleen Nelson. Have a great day, and as always, go Blazers.